So, first of all, I'm delighted to see everybody and Happy New Year to everybody. Um, there, I had to click off what was on my screen. Um, I I once introduced a speaker years ago and was honest in what I said, and it was very positive. And she told me afterwards, you shouldn't say that because you set expectations so high. So I'm having trouble biting my tongue and not telling you all what I think of Krystal, but I guess I'll just go ahead and do it. She is wonderful. And you will have a wonderful presentation this evening. And if she wants to bawl me out for setting expectations high, that's okay. I couldn't resist saying it. Anyway, I will turn it over to Krystal, who will be talking to us about her trip to Uganda. And I assume you will mention most people who are here know why you went to Uganda to begin with, but not everyone on the screen is part of the Ethical Society. So I don't know if you plan to say why you were in Uganda, but maybe if not, you can add that.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us this evening so that I could talk about, frankly, my summer sabbatical. So I am a teacher and also a member of the Ethical Society. And I put in a request to spend my summer in Uganda with the goal of doing two things. One was to visit and explore the different humanist schools in Uganda, of which the Ethical Society supports 8. And I did that for half the time. And then the other half of the time was to explore national parks in Uganda. And it turns out that if you're an American, most American tourists are showing up to do one or both of those things. To either come and see all the amazing animals on safari and or to visit with schools that they support. So it turned out that I was fitting right in what I was doing overall. So I have prepared for us today a host of things to share. Oh, hold on. And as a result, we're going to have a test case here of what happens when I hit this button. Dr. Beer, can you give me a thumbs up that you were seeing a single panel? Perfect. I have all sorts of things prepped for you all, so I want to make certain I've got all the pieces ready to go. So I'm going to focus this portion of my talk on the safari adventure and just general vacation portion of my trip. And so Uganda is in Africa. Africa is a very big place. And to get there from St. Louis was not easy. I had to do a bunch of bouncing around to get there. So actually, my through trip went to Atlanta and then to Amsterdam and then to Rwanda and then up to Uganda. Uganda's right there. And I landed in Entebbe, which you'll see is right there on the map, right on the edge of Lake Victoria. So things that you should know about Uganda, like landing in, arrive at 11:55 p.m. their time. And their time is like 8 hours ahead of us here. So it was a long trip. I traveled 24, 25 hours one way to get there. And then I spent 4 weeks there overall. And I think the pictures I'm going to show you are probably about roughly 2 weeks at that time. Uganda is glorious in terms of being an equatorial climate. It was 75 to 85 degrees every day and sunny, which is right in my wheelhouse and much nicer than St. Louis in July. It's a former British colony, So Uganda has multiple different languages, but English is one of them. And so I didn't have any like real difficulty navigating in that regard. One of the things that was challenging is that it's mostly a cash-based economy. And that's converting to Ugandan shillings, but you can't get Ugandan shillings outside of Uganda. So you have to like strap with a bunch of cash in hand, ideally big US dollars, so big bills, and then convert them when you're there, or pay pretty large fees to be able to access cash, like pulling out from your bank account with an ATM card in Uganda itself. As I said, they have a significant focus on ecotourism and safaris, because frankly, Uganda is mostly rural. It has like 3 major cities, and like everything else is a bunch of agriculture, and there's a definite divide between being in, say, Kampala or Entebbe, which is where I started, and then being in the areas of the safari. The other things that I think are noteworthy to share is that the food is delicious, and you'll be told not to eat the food, right? Because the water is not safe to drink for folks who are not natively from that area. So you do the risk of possibly having to deal with some stomach bugs, but I thought that the chance of having fresh pineapple or fresh passion fruit or fresh mango, like the whole thing, everything fresh, was worth it every day. So Winston Churchill coined the phrase that Uganda is the pearl of Africa, and I haven't been throughout the rest of Africa, but I'll say that I was pretty darn impressed with what I experienced in Uganda myself. You see on the list, those are animals that I was able to see, like in some cases be within walking distance of at the various national parks. So that's mountain gorilla, chimpanzees, primates, antelope, leopards, zebra, as they say there, rhinos, buffalo, hippos, and so many different types of birds. One of the things that's unique, I thought, was that when you go to the national park, and most national parks, I think, were about $45 US dollars a piece for admission. When you get there, you like drive around, but you're able to hire a personalized guide. So only costs like an extra $10, and you'll have a national park ranger like sit in the front seat of your safari vehicle and tell you all the awesome places to go, and will give you information about the animals and the area and historical context. You can ask them anything, and they're able to pretty much answer everything for you too, which is awesome. I had to get a lot of shots to be able to go, like a lot of shots. So the process for me started in late March, and I finally finished all of my rounds of shots like right before I left. So that was 2.5 months of shots. If you've already had, a fair number of boosters or individual shots listed on here, then you'd be good to go. But I was underprepared. I now have my yellow card though, which is, out of all of these things, is really the only one that Uganda requires that you have to show whenever you go through customs. You have to show that you have your yellow fever vaccination. Everything else is sort of running the risk on your own. And of that series, the cholera vaccination is no longer available in the US. So then you, again, just need to be careful about where it is that you're going, and in areas in which cholera is existing, then just being mindful as well. Okay, so imagine that we're actually finally on the ground. How you're getting around. So we booked with a tour group called Gorilla Tours, because they have multiple accommodation options throughout Uganda and pre-built safari experiences, as well as like ones that you can custom build. And we custom built our travel arrangements. And they have really knowledgeable drivers. So we ended up having the same 2 drivers through Gorilla Tours for the entire month that we were there. But they are experienced about being able to go in and do the safari. So I have queued up different things to show you each time. So give me a moment as I navigate through. So on the Gorilla Tours website, which I am pulling up for you right now, it's not loading. We're just going to skip it. I don't know that that's going to share very much for you. Let me come back then. But there are multiple different places or tour companies that you can use. This is just the one that we used. And so when I got to Uganda, which was, I think, probably at 1 in the morning, by the time that we finally got in the airport, and Gorilla Tours picked me up and drove me over to where I was staying, which is at the airport guest house. I spent like the next day just trying to get access to money so I would be able to use the currency locally, and getting bottled water. And in Entebbe, that was available. So only in a certain number of the communities is it actually able to like go in and like go to, say, a grocery store. I only saw 2 grocery stores of the entirety of my time in Uganda. It's just not how the system operates. But you have access on the road to be able to pull off to a side market and be able to acquire more water, for instance, but only if you have the cash to do so. So we needed to have a fair amount of Ugandan shillings. Also, side note, the currency exchange is pretty extreme. So when I pulled in and like tried to withdraw money from my US bank account, suddenly I became a billionaire in shillings. And that was really nice to see, although short-lived once I came back to the States. Right. So I stayed at the airport guest house. I loved it there. It was lovely. It was $45 a night, and I got my own private little home. They wowed me with their food, and one of the things that you're going to hear me express a lot is how in Uganda they're a big believer in the English breakfast. So this is a typical breakfast that I had every single day. I would get my choice of egg and toast, and then they would serve me all this fresh fruit that literally was grown just down the street. So I had pineapple and watermelon, bananas, and then freshly squeezed juice from, again, fruit from just down the street. And it was luscious. And then there are things that are noteworthy about this particular establishment that I didn't realize I needed to be mindful of so much. Like, I was very excited, as it turns out, to reflect back that there was both a functioning toilet that I knew how to use and a shower with hot water at this particular establishment, and good mosquito nets and electricity. I learned throughout my experience in Uganda that I wasn't guaranteed to get all of those things, even though the establishments will say, yes, yes, you do have them. You don't always. So I do have a path. So I went from Entebbe, which is, again, down here at the bottom, all the way up. For my very first stop was up here at Red Chili Rest Camp. And that meant that we traveled up to Murchison Falls National Park. But before we get there, I want to show you sort of like things that I saw on this 6-hour drive. Give me a moment. I'm going to stop the screen sharing and switch over to a different one. Okay, so I just wanted to show you some images of the airport guest house just so you have an idea about what it was like. So I have these little enclosures. One of those rooms is mine. They have this nice little area out here. And then they served us breakfast all sorted together in this space right here, right? It was very lovely. And then I made my way from Entebbe up. So things that I saw, there aren't really private vehicles like cars in Uganda. You either walk on your own 2 feet, you ride a bicycle, or you hire a boda boda. And a boda boda is someone driving a motorcycle who could literally go border to border. So that's how the boda boda came to be. And I saw so many things on boda bodas, like loads of bananas and like tons of people, like multiple as we went through. And then folks carting all sorts of things, milk and pineapples and lots of fabrics. I saw folks carting goats on boda bodas. I think I saved those pictures to be able to share. Folks selling items just off the side of the road. So multiple times we would pull off and be like, the drivers would like negotiate in Uganda, which is one of the local languages, and then would just deposit a fresh bunch of bananas right in our laps. Delicious. Yeah, like that one. So these bananas are not the kind of bananas that we're able to get here in the States. They are teeny tiny and really sweet. You would also get fresh cacao or cocoa. So these are cocoa beans or cocoa seed pods, I guess the correct phrase. This is what it looks like inside. So like your chocolate is actually this white stuff inside. And those are, yeah, dried out on the side of the road all the way through when I was driving through. And I'm gonna stop that screen share and switch over to red chili. So we showed up at Red Chili, which is in Murchison Falls. And it's described as a rest camp where they are making a point as a part of their advertisement. They're like, we're not a posh lodge with 3-course meals and all the trimmings, but we do provide an authentic safari experience, which I would say is exactly what happened. So you can like stay in this itty bitty little tent all the way up to like a much nicer establishment down here. It turns out I ended up staying in a much nicer establishment. And it came with a bed and a mosquito net and hippos walking past my door. Was incredibly terrifying, actually. And luckily, I only found out about the hippos passing my door after they had walked past me. But you're able to hear them. So you can see a little bit of this view here, and I'll go back to my photos to be able to show in a moment, that you can look out to the Nile. So the Nile is out here, and then the hippos would just walk up and in the middle of the night. So let's go back and take a look at what you might see in Murchison. So lots of animals. So they're just animals on the side of the road. So can you see that there's a little baby on the back? So cute. And that was my view from my doorstep at Red Chili. And then we went and did a safari. So some of these pictures are a little blurry, apologies. But I got to see just beautiful views and lots of wildlife. So I saw giraffes, acacia trees. So I'm purposely doing these two things together. So giraffes eat acacia trees. So if the tree in the background is an acacia tree, but so is this bush that's up on the right-hand corner. Do you see how sharp and pokey it is? The thorns are huge. And still that's what the giraffes are eating. Saw lots of antelope and There's a really gorgeous one right there. And Ugandan cob. I saw probably a herd of 1,000 Ugandan cob just like traveling past. And when we were there, they were little babies. So I also got to see pictures or images of just like baby wildlife. So baby giraffes, baby cob, baby buffalo, the whole bit. We went down and stayed until sunset and watched as animals came down to the water to get a drink. And so that's there. So these pictures here are as the light is changing. But I also got, as I was walking, as we were traveling out the safari vehicle at night, we could see the sunset with all of these giraffes coming through, which is just an image that I'm going to have permanently locked in on my mind because it was so beautiful. And then we got the next morning at 4:55 to be able to beat the sunrise and head back over the same place to be able to see what it was like in the morning. If you've not been on safari before, you rent a little vehicle like this that the top pops up so you're able to stand and they drive around and you're able to view safely from a distance because action is happening. I don't know if you all can tell, this is a picture of the baby cob nursing from its mother. I got to see all sorts of creatures straight out of The Lion King, which was fun, including this little warthog. And I was stunned by just the fact that animals were just available and totally not paying attention to me whatsoever. So I was like gobsmacked as a person who loves going to the St. Louis area zoo, just like all of the big animals that were there. My national park guide who was doing this particular safari with us found this animal was his favorite for like that particular day. So it was a turtle. And I was astonished that like somebody would point out a turtle, but apparently this particular one is endangered and he hadn't seen one in years. So he was very excited. So I'm just sharing with you what they got excited about. I was excited to see elephants, including babies. So there's a little baby one there on the right and very, very, very large ones. They're just walking right past us. And all sorts of other creatures as well. There were herds of up to 50 elephants at a time, which I had never seen before. And then hippos. So I went to Uganda hoping to see hippos, and I was very, very excited to be able to see them. In the water is a safe place to see hippos. So we ended up doing some boat trips so that they would be docile and just sort of hanging out. Hippos on land are terrifying and are like one of the most dangerous creatures to be able to encounter. But hippos in the water are just very placid. So these are some of us on the boats to be able to go see all the creatures around. So got more hippos. And then we get to actual Murchison Falls. So Murchison Falls actually fall into and create the Nile. So we went up to the top of the falls to be able to see it as well. Okay, I'm gonna stop this sharing and switch back over to here. So that's what we saw heading over to Murchison. It was amazing. Yeah, and then after that, after doing Murchison, we did the 2 safari game drives and a River Nile trip and a visit to the falls, which looked like this. This is the whole experience. We went back down south. So I will name that I did not plan this trip. I would never have recommended going 6 hours driving north just to come back 6 hours back. But there we go. So we went to Jinja next. Jinja is again, right there on Lake Victoria. And it's a pretty major city overall. Ways that I found out in Uganda that it was a major city is that the hotels were situated very much near mosques that were calling to prayer 5 times a day. And competing with that would be a concert or dance club, also blasting music at all times, also competing with the nearby church that would be blasting like Christian pop music at all hours of the day. That made it a city. It's kind of fun. So I stayed at the Sunset Hotel, which gave me gorgeous balcony views of the Nile, was willing to take my US dollars, which was nice. And they had hot water and reliable electricity. And I kid you not, I wept with joy at that point, because all these other places would say that they'd had those things, but they didn't really. But this one did. It was great. So after going to Jinja, we crossed over the Nile and then went to stay at the Haven. So you'll see that they're not very far across from each other, but literally we just had to like drive around. And we stayed at the Haven, which is an eco resort on the rapids of the Nile. And it wowed me considerably overall. So I'm going to show you some pictures of the Haven and just the Nile in a moment. But I will name that if you get to go to Uganda and you are doing it for like purely vacation purposes, checking out this place is worth every penny. It was expensive for Uganda at $150 a night, but it was full room and board, and the views were astonishingly gorgeous. So let me show you some of those. So the Haven prides itself on being this eco river lodge, right? So they have views of the Nile, gorgeous night views, and this really just peaceful experience. So there were animals traveling up within the space overall, and it is set up so that they have the capacity to do pretty substantial meals. And I'm trying to hit this picture just so you can see like your view, like because all the restaurants were open air. So your view is overlooking the Nile the entire time. And then also while you're sitting there eating your breakfast or lunch or dinner, you're watching like little monkeys jump around and just having a grand old time. So let's take a look at some of the pictures from the Haven. Actually, this is from Jinja. I lied. This is from my Sunset hotel overlooking the Nile, my balcony. This is a Nile perch. And more pictures of food. And then this is a picture from the Haven. So this is from my front doorstep. And just pictures of the Nile in general. So I went down. I don't have a photographer's eye or a high quality camera, but I did capture some pictures of cutesy little monkeys. So that's a red-tailed monkey. Jackfruit that was just growing and for the taking. And the sunset and the sunrise over the Nile. So this is sunrise from my doorstep, and then being able to catch the mist off the river was just gorgeous. And that's what it was like both days that I was there, just being able to watch the mist rise off the river. And then this is what a typical one of the courses of my breakfast meal would look like there. So they had, fresh pineapple and fresh passion fruit and fresh watermelon and fresh bananas, in addition to all the other things. It was delicious. And again, you're told not to eat it, but I ate it every single time. And I didn't get sick once. So data point of 1. This is actually my cabin. So you can see that in addition to my view, that they're giving me nice space outside to sit, but a nice little set there. And oh, I guess I don't have it. Hold on, I want to show you. I stayed in a luxury bungalow. And my particular bungalow actually had a it had a tree growing through it, which was super cool. So it had it was a tree literally growing through the front of the space. But inside, you had, a very luxurious amount of space, seating area. And then the bathrooms were beautiful. And this space over here is the shower. But since everybody had their own private bungalow, you could shower with this open window looking out to the Nile. So everybody got to watch the sunrise or the sunset from the luxury of your hot shower. Oh, what a gift. Okay. All right. Oh, stop. So sorry. So I just didn't imagine that anything was going to compete with the Haven for being most amazing place. And then they took us to Kampala, and I found out I was absolutely right. So Kampala is the largest city in Uganda. It's hugely crowded. There are lots of shopping opportunities if that's something that's of interest to you. And I ate at a delicious restaurant while I was there. But mostly it was just terrifying in terms of the traffic and the way that folks would drive. And I don't understand the rules of the road. I only saw 2 traffic lights the entire time I was in Uganda. One of them was in Kampala. And folks are driving and passing each other in all sorts of ways that made me very scared and grateful that I had paid to hire a driver rather than try to navigate that myself. I was happy to leave Kampala, very much. Things I left Kampala with, as it turned out, was COVID-19. I think I contracted it there while going on a shopping venture. I find this out later. I find it out actually when I'm at Mahingo. So we left Kampala and then went further southwest to Lake Mimburo National Park, which literally is just as advertised, a lake. And we see the animals around it. And we stayed at Mahingo Lodge. And the area was a view straight out of the opening of The Lion King. And Mahingo is actually placed in the park as opposed to nearby the park. So you drive through the park, and that meant that the animals were also like right up into the space with you. And so Mahingo was just astonishing in terms of its access to the animals and the meals. They were super accommodating of my food restrictions, and I have a lot of food restrictions, so that's saying something. And the accommodations were glorious. So I want to show you a little bit about Mahingo because it turned out it was my favorite place of all the places that we went. And I'll show you some pictures of Mahingo as well. So this is Mahingo. This space up here are like open air restaurants and like just hangout seating areas. There was a pool that overlooked like the rest of the park. Over here, there is a set of animals that would like always come up, and so you could always see a particular type of animal right here. And then each person had their own like private bungalow. Mine was the buffalo bungalow, and really what it is like a enclosed tent that you would zip up or zip down, and it would have living spaces within. So I had a bedroom that looked like this, and a view that looked like that. So I had my own little private balcony space that overlooked 2 different areas. So when I stayed in the buffalo space, I ended up having a view of baboons that were like right next door at a water hole. And then I ended up being moved to a space farther down to accommodate one of the individuals in our group. And then I was near a salt lick, and I just got to watch as animals just kept coming up to the salt lick. But again, from the safety of my balcony. So yeah, I spent some time in the pool, checking out a view like that. And you can watch as animals, like down here is the watering hole. You can just watch animals walk all around the park from where you were. And these are the bungalows. So like I had one down here, but the dining area is up here, right? So like you had to walk around to get to the next place, but they were separated from each other. So if you were hoping for privacy, you definitely had it. Like here was one person staying, and then here was a different person staying. It was challenging for the rest of the group I was with, who were mostly 75 years of age and older, to be able to navigate this place. So they ended up needing to be relocated from like the bottom spots all the way up here to the ones that were closer to the dining area, just so there would be fewer steps that they had to take. I don't mind steps. I was excited about it overall. Okay. Oh, and then here is the restaurant, which again, open air and just amazing food. So let's look at what happens at Lake Mimburo. Well, on the drive up to Lake Mimburo, there are just zebra on the side of the road. Like here, if I'm driving through rural Missouri, maybe I'll see cattle on the side of the road. There was zebra. This was not anything special. Like I was able to take multiple selfies with zebra, in fact. There are also a fair amount of Ankoli cattle. So depending upon the area of Uganda that you're in, there are like different foods that you're more likely to be served. So here in this area, you're more likely to be able to get dairy and steak, where that wasn't really available in other places. These are the baboons that I could see from my room. They were very funny. And I was told that I couldn't leave my clothing out to dry because they would come and take them, and they totally tried to, because I ignored the rule. My mistake. I did not make that mistake twice. Here's my space. Here's my bathroom. It was glorious. And again, hot water. And you'll see right over here, they provided us with mineral water each day. So I actually was able to safely drink the water while I was there, because they kept providing access. And that was nice because there's nowhere close to go and buy that sort of resource. You can also see that they've sourced their decorations from local fabrics and local basket making. So that was pretty common. I'm going to skip this video. Here again, the view from the restaurant. Me being excited about being there. And then they would do fire pit and s'mores making at night. So I spent an evening reading by the fire, and just really enjoying listening to the animal sounds. And then the next morning, I got up and I went into Lake Minboro proper and did another safari adventure. This one, I didn't have to stay in the vehicle for. So you pay to go into Lake Minboro, and then you're able to do a walking tour. So we have a national park guide. That's him right here. And he walks you around, and we got to be like really up close with the animals as a result. I thought that was pretty remarkable. So we did sunrise with the animals, and I don't know if these videos are going to load for you all. Okay, I don't think that they are. So we were just able to see just like animals traveling around again, not paying us any attention. I don't think any of these videos are loading, which is a shame. So there were zebra and buffalo, lots of cob and antelope again. And then one of the things that was really cool, I got to be right up close to these giraffe here, including these 3 babies. And you can see, right, like we're definitely needing to be in hiking gear because we're traversing an area that's like, it's not a designated trail, right? So you're just wandering along. And you can also see here, so we're coming close up to the giraffes, but I want to point out that our national park guide was carrying a pretty high-powered rifle. And actually, all of the guides are carrying rifles, as well as everybody that I saw, like official-wise at the airport, was carrying pretty heavy-duty weaponry. But this one was for our individual protection overall, in case an animal came too close that they would shoot to scare it away. So, as I shared, I think I got COVID in Kampala, and then I brought it to Mahingo. And I didn't realize it because I barely got any symptoms, but I did end up testing positive while I was there. And that's not ideal because there's not really Western medicine available in Uganda. I'll just name that. And but what was and turned out to be ideal was the fact that I was isolated in my own little private bungalow, and they had regular service where they would just bring you your meals, and the space where I was beautiful, and I was able to sit and enjoy myself quite a lot. So here they made certain to bring me my beans, my specialty made beans and rice meal with my delicious fruit overall. And I wept, actually, because it was so nice that they brought that to me so that I could have my dinner and without my having to possibly bring contagion to them. And there's my fresh little passion fruit. Okay. Oh, and this video isn't going to load. That's a shame. So this video, if it chooses to load, and it's not, was going to share the animal sounds I got to hear at night as the baboons and the monkeys and other animals were like jumping on top of the area where I was sleeping and screeching in the middle of the night. It's terrifying and fun now that I'm not in that experience anymore. And then here's from my balcony that particular morning. Drinking my spiced water, which is really warm ginger tea, which is a pretty common Ugandan beverage. And so then I still had COVID, and it wasn't safe for me to go to the schools, which is where we were supposed to go next. And so I had to find another place to be. And I moved over to another section of Lake Mimburo, to a place called Mimburo Eagle's Nest, which was on the other side of the park. So you can see that there was some community nearby. And then at this particular place, I got my own tent. So I just spent 2 or 3 days sitting around in my own area in this enclosed space, and read books and stared off onto views like this, where I was able to watch all sorts of animals like romp around on the mountain views down in the valley below. And then once I was feeling better with my mask on, I was able to walk around and check out just the different views of plants in that particular area. The plants that you're seeing in the photo are banana trees. So there are banana plants everywhere in Uganda, and super commonplace. These were green bean plants, not like the green bean plants here locally. I was kind of fascinated by that. And then this was a neighboring school right next door to where we were. And I was able to listen as the kids ran up and down the hill and sang songs at their Monday morning meeting and just had community together. Yeah. So as it turned out, well, that video's not going to show. So yeah, as it turned out, getting COVID in Uganda, while not ideal, I was able to make it work in a way that was safe, I think, for everybody who is helping me, while also myself not feeling like I was putting other individuals at risk. And that was because the way that these particular locations are designed is that everyone is in their own individual enclosed space, and that is just the way that it works, right? So it isn't like a hotel where there are lots of folks all crowded together in the same hall. So that was nice. And that was me just enjoying sitting and watching the view and reading books. All right. Eagle's Nest, in terms of accommodations, is a lot cheaper than Mahingo. So if you are thinking about going to Uganda and you're trying to figure out economically where is a better place to be, this particular spot was significantly less expensive, but its services were not anywhere close as posh. But it was lovely, and I enjoyed my time there. All right. You would think that at this point I would have been done safaring, but I wasn't. We had more safaring to do. So after being there, I went to one more national park, and that was Queen Elizabeth, which was just, I would say it was just nearby, but no, it wasn't. Nothing is really nearby in Uganda. Is that you're not guaranteed to have paved roads where it is that you're going. But this one was about 4 hours away. And I stayed at Bush Lodge, which had ensuite bandas, which again were like there's these own individual cabins. And I will name that it had very limited electricity by it, like it identified that for you. It's like, please don't plug anything in. And I didn't see that sign. I plugged something in and blew out the electricity in my banda. Not ideal. I regretted that because then I didn't have lights or anything afterwards. But it did have loads of hot water and a luxurious shower, and a pretty amazing view of the Camara River and the wildlife nearby. So I was able to step out front on my banda and watch as elephants walked through the river, saw as other animals came down to get drinks of water. was able to see hippos and alligators and crocodiles. And that was pretty cool. So I want to share with you, back up here. This is what those look like, those spaces. So I had my own little cabin inside. And they describe them. You can see that they're all separate from each other. And the space inside was nice, right? It was always singles, and you have to pay for everything by single, even if there are multiple people inside of this space. You're sort of paying for the bed and paying for the food. So the prices are a little staggered as a result. And there was an enclosed bathroom and then an outdoor shower space, which was really cool, actually, to be able to step outside and then take a shower. And it's sort of like this rainfall experience. And you could like look up and see the stars while you were showering. And that was awesome. And it turned out it had hot water. So I wanted to take a shower. I didn't always take showers while I was in Uganda for lots of reasons. But I definitely took one here, and I had a hippo-based experience in my shower. So I wanted to take a shower when it was dark, and because I wanted to do the whole seeing the stars experience. And so I got up really early that morning, and I step outside, and I hear that just like right on the other side of this enclosure, which is just, you know, some sticks, I hear, and then I ran right back inside to my little cabin space and like waited. And then I was like, okay. And I step back out. I turn on the water. I hear it again. I was like, okay. And then I hear it like finally just kind of like huff. And then boom, 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 away. I was like, okay, all right. I'm gonna get my shower in right now before this creature comes crashing through. That was not my only hippo experience, but it was certainly one that felt very close. I didn't, in the end, take a lot of pictures when I was in Queen Elizabeth or at Bush Lodge. I was frankly a little safaried out at that point, which I recognize is the height of privilege to say, but I was tired, and it was the end of a month of traveling at this point, so I was a little weary. But here is the waterway that runs along the park. You can see, right, like buffalo are coming down into the water and elephants in the water. They had a really nice fire pit, and they did dining out here in the open air, which was really cool, actually. A little buggy, so you had to make certain you were taking your malaria prophylaxis and wearing the bug spray, but still very nice. We had an experience where we were dining at night, and so imagine this much darker, and then 3 hippos charged into our dining area. And so we all the humans stood up and fled as far as we could in places that we thought would be secure. And then the restaurant staffers who are not paid enough had to like scare off the hippos with clapping their hands at them and hoping that they would go away. And then each person got a personalized escort back to their banda so that they would not have animal encounters themselves. Fun times. Oh, none of these videos are loading for you. I'm so sorry. I got to see dwarf mongoose, which you can see in the St. Louis Zoo, and also right here. They were tiny and adorable, and I was really excited to see them. And lots more antelope, and then some buffalo. So this is a mama buffalo, and this is a baby buffalo, and I watched as they ran away and escaped. And then I also watched as their related family members did not make it out of the lion attack. And I watched a baby buffalo crash down, and that was, well, we won't watch that video. I also got to see a leopard, like right up there. It was just right on the corner, like staring right at us, which was not an animal that I anticipated we were going to be able to see. That was an incredible sighting. And I did yet another boat tour because I could. And so we've got some buffalo with some birds and some more hippos. You all, I never got tired of seeing hippos, but again, much safer in the water. This hippo is an albino hippo. I don't know if you can see that as it's opening up its mouth and telling the world that it doesn't have fish. So the story in Uganda is that hippos are vegetarians and they're only allowed to be in the water because they show to God, or whoever else will be looking, when they open their mouth that they don't have fish inside, and that's why they're allowed to be there. That's what we were told anyway. I also got really close to hippo babies. So there are hippo babies in here, and they would ride on the backs of their mothers. And then if you got too close in the boat, the mothers would sink, and then hippos babies would sink too. And then you would sort of like wait and hope, and like, can you see their teeny tiny layers? And then they would pop back up again. So cute. And then this was sort of like my last views of the beautiful area in Uganda overall. And then we had to make our drive back. So I already showed you some pieces, but on our way back, we stopped off and saw a couple of other schools. And also just saw a little bit more of the flora of the area. Like I got to go to a botanical garden in Entebbe, but the pictures I'm going to show you here, I just thought were just interesting, right? So this is the banana plant, and this is the banana plant flower. Those again are cocoa beans. They're just growing on the sides of the trees. Like it never occurred to me to wonder what that looked like. So it was really cool to see it up close. And then there are all sorts of plants that I can see growing in the climatron at the botanical gardens, and they were just going around there. I stayed at one place and I walked around and I saw what were avocados that had just fallen from the tree. And look at the size of this avocado. It's the size of my foot. Yeah, commonplace. So when we were coming back through, we ended up staying in one of the hotels in this area as well. So you can see Entebbe is more built up, because it was like a resort community for the British. And these are pictures from the botanical gardens there. I think this plant is growing in the Ethical Society right now, the smaller version. So is this one. This was papyrus, which I had no idea what it looked like, but it looked like this. And papyrus grows in all sorts of the marshland in Uganda. That's baby papyrus. These are sausage trees. That's what they call them. Again, just really cool things I'd never seen before. Oh, and this video, is it sharing with you? Okay. So there was one other animal that I wanted to see on my trip, and it was a colobus monkey. And we had gotten to the point where we're like last days, like literally this is the day before I'm coming back to the United States, and I hadn't seen one. And so we went to the botanical gardens, and we got lost. And we're wandering around, and we look up, and there's a colobus monkey up in the air. And like we're trying to track it, and I pull out my camera to take a photo, and the little creature threw something at me and hit my camera, and that was the result. So right as I hit record, you hear me laughing because it had just hit me. Anyway, so there's a colobus monkey as well, and we'll be able to watch it maybe right here. So I was delighted by that, to see one more animal, again, just like commonplace out in the area. This is called a money tree, and I thought its leaves were beautiful overall. And then there were these other things just sort of growing on the trees that I didn't quite understand. And there was not appropriate, or what I would consider super helpful signage for me to learn much about the plants like I would have here at Botanical Gardens. And then in the end, the things that I brought back with me, tourist-wise, were baskets and earrings and fabrics. So that was one basket, but here's another one. And yet another one. And gosh, are you seeing its trend? Yet another one. I loved the basket. So they're all hand woven. And there isn't plastic in Uganda, right? So everyone is carrying things in hand woven baskets and served in hand woven baskets. And it was just beautiful to see all of those natural fibers being collected and used and made into functional art. And I was lucky enough to be able to bring some of that back home with me. Okay. I have one other thing to share, and then if we do questions, I'm happy to take them. And that is that there were other national parks. And I didn't go to all of them. There were two more that I did not get a chance to go and see. One is Bwindi, and the other is Kabali. So Bwindi is a national park that has three family groups of gorillas and mountain gorillas. And then Kabali has chimpanzees. So you're able to literally go and do hikes, and then in areas where the chimpanzees are traveling around you. I had, again, COVID, and the animals can contract COVID. So it wasn't safe for me to go to those particular national parks because I could share and endanger those animals. And that is not at all what I wanted to do. So some of the people I was with went ahead and went to these places, but I passed and instead stayed in my Lake Memburo little tent and read books instead. All right, everybody, thanks for watching the slides for my summer vacation. I appreciate you coming so I can tell some stories. And I am happy to take questions of any type if folks are interested.
I think people will be interested in asking questions, and I think the best way to do it is to let you take charge of it. So if people want to, either you can unmute yourselves now, I believe, and ask your question, or if you're having trouble breaking in, raise your hand or whatever. But Krystal, we appreciate you offering to stay for questions. But I first want to say that was fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
Yep.
So you lived up to the fact of what I expected.
I appreciate that.
Storyteller. I said you're a great storyteller.
Oh, thanks. I see in the chat. Oh, did I visit the schools? I did visit schools. I visited lots of schools, actually. And if that is a story that you're interested in hearing, I did a different talk at the Ethical Society, and there's a podcast on the Ethical Society website, so you can hear the stories. And I believe maybe that my pictures from those experiences are also available on the website, I believe, and on the Facebook page of the Friends of the Ethical Society Facebook. All right.
There's lots of stuff coming up in the chat.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. Okay, so I'm just going to go up to the top. So one of the questions is, when safarying, was there a danger of snakes in the tall grasses? I did not see one snake the entire time that I was there. So I don't know. The danger that folks kept telling me to be wary of was much smaller, right? That I needed to be wary of mosquito bites from malaria, and I needed to be wary of possibly ingesting stomach bug items from food that had not been properly cleaned, or ingesting the water. But I didn't see any snakes at all. And I don't remember anybody mentioning that to me either. So not to say that there is not a danger, but it wasn't one that I was experiencing. The next question says, were the mosquitoes or other insects ever a problem? And I would say the answer is, you had to be mindful of mosquitoes. So during the day, when the sun is out, wasn't much of a problem. But once the sun went down, or like right at in the morning, right at that dusk and dawn time break, there would be mosquitoes out. And one of the individuals I was with, it was a mosquito researcher, actually. And so she would tell us, like, when was the high time for mosquitoes with malaria, when they would be biting. I couldn't keep track of all of that. So I just made certain that I used my mosquito net. And again, some places that I stayed had better mosquito nets than others. So I brought things to patch up my mosquito nets at night. And yeah, then I used bug repellent, and made certain to wear long pants and long sleeves. And so there were sometimes, like, there was one place when we were at Queen Elizabeth and we were at Bush Lodge and we were having meals outside. They put little lanterns right next to our table so that we could see, but it also meant that we had like little bug magnets here and here. So there was a little bit of like waving those bugs away while we were eating. In the end, I did not get a single bug bite, which I count as a win. One of the reasons is because there are these cutesy little lizards that come inside of your living spaces and also eat the bugs. And that was nice. I was surprised whenever I arrived in Uganda and I went checked inside of my airport guest house space at like 2 in the morning, and I went to use the restroom, and there was a little lizard sitting on my toilet seat, and I was like, oh no! But no, turns out that lizard was a gift to me. So John and Brenda are asking, please tell us about the group you traveled with. I traveled with trustees of the Uganda Humanist Schools Trust. So I traveled with 5 other folks who are all Brits, and 2 folks within the guerrilla tours. So, and those 2 were native to the area. So, are you interested in hearing about the the British folks that I traveled with or the local Ugandans that I traveled with? John, Brenda, do you?
Both. Just curious. How did you plan about this before you? Obviously, you planned before you left, and so we're familiar with like the major travel companies, but this sounds like you did something that was off the beaten path. So that's why we're curious.
Yeah. So I would say again, I did no planning. I connected up with the Uganda Humanist Schools Trust, who try to go to see the schools in Uganda every summer. And so they do a friendship tour, that's what they call it. And so you're able to join up with them. And then the chair of the trust, Steve Hurd, and his co-chair, Hillary Hurd, his spouse, taught in Uganda and lived in Uganda when they were younger. And they've gone back to Uganda pretty much every year for the past 50 years. So they put together the itinerary and I tagged along. And that's how that came to be.
It's amazing.
Yeah, again, lucky beneficiary of someone who had never been to that continent before and didn't know a single person really, to show up with folks who were experts and had lots of experience. That was lovely. And then I traveled with Francis and Adam, Waswa Adam. Those were our two drivers for the month. And I have all sorts of stories about those two because I got to spend a lot of time in the car with them, or excuse me, a lot of time in the safari truck with them. And since I had never been, I just sort of pestered them with questions and they were gracious about answering. So that was really amazing. And yeah, I have a lot of journaling that I've done about things that Francis and Adam had shared with me and, caused me to think a little bit more deeply about just my own individual perspective and what I was taking away from my experience there.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Do you arrange your own safari stays or have a travel company or group arrange them? So again, Steve Hurd arranged them, but then we also connected with a group called Gorilla Tours. And Gorilla Tours clearly advertising that you can go and see gorillas in Uganda. That's a pretty common thing for Americans to come in and want to see the big five. So they have like a list of 5 animals that they want to be able to see, and they'll go on safari hoping to see those. So yeah, so I guess we did a hodgepodge.
So Krystal, I have a question. You talked about sort of indirectly about the risk of animals, because they are animals and you can't trust them, but in other words, to not attack you. What about safety in terms of other humans? When you were mentioning, you carry all the cash with you, is safety an issue at all on any of these travels?
That's a really good question. So, and then follow up, one of the questions from Jim Rhodes is, what is the political situation in Uganda? So I'm going to address both of those kind of together, if that's okay. Uganda is technically a democracy. The current president has served for about 35 years. So Uganda itself is known to be a pretty corrupt governmental space. And there have been plenty of stories of folks being pulled over and just like the police just wanting a bribe to be able to be released from that particular spot to be able to move forward. Like I've heard plenty of stories of that. I did not experience that personally, but that's what I've heard. When we were in I never felt unsafe in any place whatsoever. And I did things that I had been told deliberately not to do. So for instance, we were in a city, we were in Mbara, which I didn't talk with you all about, but I was in one of the cities, and I got up that morning because I heard the call to prayer, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm just going to go walk around this area. And so I spent like an hour and a half just sort of walking around the city by myself. And, you know, it's questionable whether it is safe for a white woman to be walking around in an area that she doesn't know very well by herself. But I did it, and everybody was totally friendly and kind and didn't bother me at all, except to, you know, say good morning, right? I always had my cash on me, I guess. I didn't ever leave it behind. And then I didn't do all the conversions at once. I'll say that as well. So I went in with some amount of US dollars, and it turned out it wasn't sufficient. So then I did withdrawals from my bank, and then like sort of did pooling of cash that regard. Yeah. I don't know if I'm fully answering your question, but I did not worry about my own safety, I guess. And I had plenty of opportunity being there for a month to be able to do so. And I just never did. Actually, I take that back. I've got one story. Would you like to hear one story?
Sure.
Okay. So we were visiting one of the schools, and the school director had like brought us into this one particular area to show us a new plot of land that had been gifted to them, and they wanted to build a new school on that location, right? And so I'm there like walking around, and I see tiny baby goats. They were adorable. And so I go over and I pull out my camera, and I'm taking pictures of these baby goats. And a very, very angry man with a very large rifle came out and started like yelling at me in a language I did not know, and made it very clear that I was doing something wrong. And Adam, who was one of the drivers, came over and, you know, translated and effectively was trying to say, like, you took pictures of the police station that's right there. And that's not, so he needs your camera. He's going to confiscate your camera. I'm like, well, my camera is my phone. And I'm like, no, I was taking pictures of goats, right? Like goats. And they went back and forth. And then finally, Adam was able to make a joke about how I was the silly white woman who would, of course, be taking pictures of ghosts. And then they all laughed. And that was the end of the experience. Mm-hmm. I walked away knowing that you're not supposed to be taking pictures of the police stations or of the military. But they don't take kindly to that. But goats, fully fine.
Did you get all the questions that were in the chat? I haven't read them all, so.
I think so. Yeah.
And are there other questions from the group?
Can we see the pictures of the police station?
I actually didn't take pictures of the police station, but I definitely have pictures of the goats. Do you all want to see pictures of the goats?
Sure.
Sure.
Let me pull them back up. I know I didn't show them to you because I was like, nobody's going to want to see my pictures of goats. But chickens and goats were all over the place in Uganda, just free roaming chickens. And people would have goats like tied up on like just posts all along the roads, and they would just come around and move their goat each day or each couple of days, and the goat would just sort of graze in that particular area, and then they would just like pick him up on his little stick post and put him in a new spot. It was, yeah, it was interesting. Here are the goat that caused such trouble. Aren't they adorable? Wouldn't you want that too? I wanted to cuddle them. They were not very interested in my cuddles. And yeah, that was right before the adventure with the police officer. I also do have photos of the military, which I didn't realize I wasn't allowed to do, but I took pictures of the military while they were training, like on one of the highway roads. And I have since deleted that because I just found out that I wasn't supposed to do it, and I didn't need that. I didn't need that trouble. So,
Other questions?
thank you. That's very kind.
None. I want to thank you very much. That was excellent. It has been recorded. So for those people who aren't here, if they inquire, we'll let them know that it's recorded. And it seems like Louise is going to be able to put it up on YouTube, which will be great from what she implied. I also, in addition to thanking you, I want to mention that our next presentation in March is another place or a place that we haven't heard about, and that's Madagascar. And Linda Locke is going to be talking about Madagascar, and I think the date is March 17th. It's the third Friday in March. But I hope you will all join me in thanking Krystal. I thought that was wonderful. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
You're welcome.